Good evening. What is being presented here is not just a naval movement. It is a claim of a U.S. pushing of the Strait of Hormuz under direct obstruction from Iranian sea mines, with commercial traffic, oil shipments, and military credibility all tied to the outcome, if that claim is accurate. 10. This is not a routine passage. It is a test of whether one of the world's most important maritime points can be closed by stealth and ribbon only true, but with patience. Risk. The hot test detail is the mine threat itself. Not missiles, not warships on the horizon. Mines, hidden, passive, and broadly effective. That matters because mines are not need to sink a fleet to achieve their purpose. They only need to create no uncertainty to stop movement, slow a scarce raise insurance cost, and turn every mile of weather into a pristine. Put simply, this is no longer a minor detail. Strum's factual point in this kind of scenario is easy to understand. What modern naval means are dangerous precisely because less fovas they can sit on the seabed remains suspended below the surface. They can react to matter change, engine noise, or pressure displacement. A ship does not have to touch one to be hit. That part is credible. That is how my warfare works, and that is why even a superior navy can be forced to slow down and operate with extreme caution, passion, ver. But this is also where the framing deserves scrutiny. Saying a fleet is rebooting a stray sounds decisive and clean. In reality, mine clearance is neither. It is methodical, exposed, and unforgiving. And if it can dominate the air and still be vulnerable in a mine channel, it can have overwhelming firepower and still be forged into slow, repetitive, highly delicate work. That is the hidden contradiction at the center of this story. Strength is present, but freedom of action is raised, and that reduction matters far beyond the ships involved. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a strip of water between rival forces. It is one of the most sensitive arteries in the global energy system. When traffic through that corridor is threatened, the effect does stay at sea. It moves into shipping rates, energy price, market and city, and political signaling across the region. The visible development is only the surface. The transcript also leans hard on operational intensity, and some of it is pervasive packaging rather than proof. Constant lookout rotations, machine guns man it, air defenses active, helicopters scanning ahead, crews at full readiness. All of that is plausible in a high-threat environment, but the key analytical question is not whether a navy can posture defensively while clearing mines. Of course it can. The real question is what the poster reveals. It reveals vulnerability during the clearance window. It reveals that even temporary obstruction can force a major power into a slower, incorporable pattern. And it reveals how an asymmetric threat can impose disproportionate straight costs. This is where analysis becomes more important than repetition. The mind is not merely a weapon, it is leverage. It turns geography into pressure. It forces the side trying to restore order to absorb delay, consume resources, and remain exposed to follow and trust the dries and tries cheese the misses or fast attack craft. Even if not a single mine detains underace a warship, the operation can still succeed on Terran's perspective if it disrupts commerce, tasks, emotional variation resolve, or raise this to fatal its use to %. That does not prove every dramatic claim surrounding the operation. It does not confirm the skill of the minefield, the exact pace of clearance, or the broader military objective. Official confirmation would still matter. But if the cost scenario is true, then the deeper issue is already clear. This is now more than clearing water. It is about whether deterrence still works when a narrow channel can be weaponized in ways that are cheap to deploy and costly to reverse. And that leaves the first real pressure point hanging over everything else. If a fleet must slow to survive, how long does control of the sea remain meaningful before the delay itself becomes the strategic victory? The operational centerpiece here is the mine clearing sequence, and on its face, it is credible. Underwater drones scanning first, divers set where machines cannot safely maneuver. a remote disposal vehicle placing a charge, and command staff watching the live feed as the target is neutralized. That is a recognizable pattern in modern mine countermeasures. The strongest point in this sequence is not the spectacle, it is the logic. When visibility is poor, seabed terrain is irregular, and a mine is partly buried or trapped in coral or reef, every decision becomes slower because caution is the mission. That matters because speed is the one thing a force in a narrow choke point cannot easily sacrifice without consequence. Once a fleet slows to near minimum movement, it becomes more predictable. Also becomes predictable. It becomes easier to track. And once it is easier to act, the pressure on every defensive layer rises at the same time. Air defense crews have less room for error. Lookouts face a wider burden. Escort ships must hold tighter discipline. Helicopters become more important, but also more exposed. The real concern is the consequence behind it. This is also where the transcript tries to price toll control. Sonar systems active, helicopters towing detection gear, heavy guns loaded, anti-air systems ready, submarines and cruisers at full combat status. That may all be plausible. But there is a difference between readiness and securities. Readiness means the fleet knows the danger is serious. It does not mean the zinger has been mastered. In fact, the need for so many overlapping defensive measures suggests the opposite. It suggests a force trying to prevent a mine clearance mission from becoming the perfect target set. The mention of Iranian drones and missiles is important for actually that reason. A minefield element can delay movement. A minefield covered by surveillance drones or missile threat can shape behavior far more aggressively. Even if no attack is launched, the possibility of one can so influence timing, drone selection, aircraft choosing, aircrafters each, reader posture, and weapon status. In military terms, that is not background noise. It is part of the weapon system. This is why the framing deserves scrutiny. Here is another deeper issue here. Mine warfare compresses the difference between tactical action and strategic effect. A single device on the seabed is small. The chain reaction it triggers is not. Divers must be launched. Boats must separate from lagger ships. Disposal systems must be deployed. Helicopters must sweep. Escorts must cover. Commanders must decide whether to disarm, detonate, bypass, or mark for layer clearance. Each of those steps consumes time, tension, and exposure, and in a quarter tied to the global trade. Time itself becomes geopolitical. That is why the phrase road was clear needs to be treated carefully. Clear at one point does not mean safe in a durable sense. It may only mean one contact was removed, one segment was checked, or one moving corridor was judged evil for the moment. Mine warfare is not solved by one underwater explosion and one column of spray. The weakest logical leap begins there. A narrow reroast can be opened temporarily while the wider environment remains unstable, contested, and vulnerable to remaining or secondary attack. 10 theorists, the final visual detail. The heavy machine guns being loaded to engage drones or floating mines. Again, plausible, but analytically, that image tells nothing larger. It tells us the fleet is preparing for a threat from above and at the surface while also worrying about what's below. That is a three-dimensional stress problem and one of the most politically charged ways on Earth. And no matter how disciplined the crews are, this kind of pressure multiplies the chance of accident, visshredding of calcium, are 7 counted between for civilian for infiltration, stiff calm, stiff engine, stomachation. So the deeper issue is no longer whether one mine can be destroyed. It is whether a corridor of this vital can be kept open without sliding from control clearance into even conflict. And once that question enters the picture, a more serious one follows close behind. If every successful clearance still leaves the fleet slow, visible, and under threat as the passage truly revenant, orally being used under temporary perimetry, what matters now is not just whether one route was cleared. It is whether Strait of Hormuz can remain open without every passage becoming a military gamble. That is the deeper fault line in this story. A mine can be destroyed. A corridor can be stemmed. A convoy can be pushed through. But none of this settles the real question of control when the threat is cheap, hidden, and easy to repeat. That is what makes this so dangerous. The visible operation may look like strength. The underlying reality is strain. Every slow-moving throw contested waiter raises the cost, sharpens the risk, and keeps the next escalation only one mistake away. This is why the framing matters. The issue is not simply whether traffic resumes, it is whether stability can survive under constant coercion, and that remains unresolved. Leave your view below. Is this a genuine reopening of a strategic waterway, or only a temporary passage under armed pressure? Follow the next development closely, because the next shift may tell us far more than the first move did. And subscribe so you do not miss the next turn in a story where the consequences reach far beyond the ships on the way.